All right, so we're talking perimeter defense and guarding the ball. So right here, Caleb and Brock. Caleb's just saying he's on defense, so we're going to break down a good defensive position for Caleb. We're going to talk in a second about knowing your matchup and channeling them and funneling them in different directions. But the basics, of course, is like you want to be in a good defensive stance. So Caleb, you'll be in a good defensive stance. So his chest is up and his hips are low, his hips are back. And his hands, he wants to have his hands out to try and deflect a pass, or like if this guy's weak with the basketball, Caleb can reach in and he can poke at the ball. Normally, yeah, you want to go like that where your palms are up, poking at the ball, because if you go overhand, you're probably going to foul. So you want to be in that position right there. So knowing your matchup, you want to know what your advantage or disadvantage is. So we'll go over a couple scenarios right now. Let's just say the ball handler, Brock, is way faster than the defender. If he's way faster, then the defender probably wants to take a little bit of a step back so that he can retreat and give himself space to cover the ball. Now, if it's flipped, the ball handler is slower or less quick than the defender. Well, if this guy's way quicker, this defender's way quicker, he can really, really pressure the ball. If the offensive player can really shoot it, but they suck at driving, then you want to really pressure the ball. If it's the opposite, they're a really good driver but a bad shooter, then like, let's say that guy couldn't shoot at all. You know, as a defender, you would want to play way off. Now, if they're a good driver and they're a good shooter, well, they're a good player. So you just got to have really good effort and pressure the ball and defend the drive. But you got to know who you're guarding, what they're good at, and you always want to force them to their weakness and what they're bad at. Now we're going to talk about forcing the ball handler to their weak hand. The younger you are, so like JV, freshman teams and younger, usually if you force the ball handler to their weak hand, most of the time you're going to totally shut them down. So Brock is good at dribbling with both hands, but let's just say as a right-handed player, let's say his left hand, he's really bad at dribbling with his left hand. So what Caleb's going to want to do is have an angle where the middle of his head is kind of on Brock's right shoulder, and you can see right here Caleb dropped his right foot. So he is basically telling that ball handler, I want you to dribble to your left. So now let's just go half speed. Let's say Brock, don't go yet, but let's say you would dribble this way and then change direction. And Caleb, you do the wrong thing right here and you open up. So let's just do that half speed. So we're saying Caleb is forcing the ball handler to his weak hand, and then as Brock changed directions, all right, you can stop right there. This defender, in this case, they opened up and they allowed the ball handler to get back to their strong hand. That is the wrong thing to do. So let's go back. And Caleb, this time you're just going to stay at that angle. Brock, you're going to change directions, but Caleb, you're going to stay right there and force him to his left. So we're saying we're forcing him to his weak hand. The ball handler tries to get back to their strong hand. And what a good defender will do is not open up, but stay at that angle. And now you could probably get a steal, or you're just going to cut that offensive player off. So usually, and even sometimes at the high school or college level, if the offensive player has a really bad weak hand, you just want to open your hips up in that direction that forces them that way, and don't let them get back to their strong hand. Okay, now we're going to talk about contesting shots. Something that a lot of defenders do on shots is that offensive player will create space for the shot and they just keep their hands down. Well, the more you keep your hands down, the more shots the other team is going to make. So a good contest, Brock, you won't shoot it here, but let's just say you're in your shot pocket. Or let's just say go ahead and like you shot it and you released it and just shoot it to me right here. Yeah, hold your follow through. Yeah, so let's say Brock shot it right there. Caleb, as a good defender, how we want to contest the shot is we want to go straight up and reach as high as possible. We want to get as close to the offensive player as possible and let him land on his feet. So what'll happen sometimes, and you can reset, like what'll happen sometimes is that guy will go up to shoot, but then the defense will land somewhere around his feet. First of all, the offensive player might get hurt, they might turn their ankle, but second of all, you're going to foul. So one key phrase that some coaches say is just imagine there's a glass wall right in front of the shooter, and you don't want to break past this glass wall. Instead, you want to reach up as high as possible, jump as high as possible, and of course you also don't want to bring this arm down because now you're going to foul that shooter. So the key to contesting those jump shots is just reaching as high and as straight up as you can. Now, when we're talking about contesting shots in the paint, let's say, Brock, you can come down here. So now we're saying this offensive player drove down into the paint and just kind of get like you're about to take a layup or something. Yeah. So offensive player is now looking like they're going up for a layup. There's two mistakes that defensive players often make. And Caleb, I'll play defense right here so you can just step right there. So one mistake that defensive players will make is they'll reach across their body. So I'm left-handed, so this angle would be natural for me to reach across. But they'll reach across right here, and now I'm bringing my shoulder across his body. I'm probably going to foul. The second mistake a lot of defenders make is they'll just try to totally block the shot and just wind up their arm. 9 times out of 10, that doesn't work, and it's a foul. So what we want to do, Caleb, you can slide in, is just be completely vertical. So what Caleb's going to do, so Caleb wants to bring both arms straight up as possible. He's not trying to block the shot. He's not winding up. But what will happen is if you can jump as high as you can and reach your arms up as high as you can, sometimes you're naturally going to have a block. So you want those arms up as high as you can, and then also you want to absorb the contact with your chest. So just kind of walk into him right here. So Caleb's going to go straight up, and he's going to absorb that contact into his chest while keeping his hands straight up. And if the offensive player creates that contact with the defense, it's not going to be a foul. So that's just called verticality, or getting straight vertical when you're contesting shots at the rim. All right, now we're going to go over 4 positions off of the ball. So right now we're saying Caleb is guarding Brock on defense. We're saying I am an offensive player on the wing right here. So we're going to go over a couple of help or deny positions right here. So the first thing, and we're focused on Caleb as the defender right here, is on this pass. So go ahead and make this pass, Brock. So right here, we're in basic help position. So the goal of help position right here is if I'm going to drive right here and drive middle, we want this defender to be able to help on this drive, and then if I kick out, that's the recover part. So right there, Caleb would help and recover back out to his man. So that's basic help and recover position. Let's just do that kind of half speed. So I'll catch it and do like a half speed drive. So catching here, now I'm driving, he cuts me off all the way, I pass it back out, and now he's back matched up. Now one key with help is as we pass it out, Caleb, give us a bad example where you just throw your arm out instead of helping with your chest. So a bad example of help is when this guy's driving and all this defender does is get his hand in front of the driver. That's what you don't want to do. Instead, you want to get your full chest in front of the guy who's driving. So as I drive, Caleb is sliding all the way in front of me. Now his chest is in front of me. I kick it back out. He'll have a hand in the passing lane. And then as I kick it out, he's recovering back out. So that's help and recover position. Now we're going to go over deny. So it all depends on what your team runs for your defense. But as we pass here, so now Caleb, instead of being in help position, he is in deny position. So he has his inside hand, his right hand is in the passing lane. He's trying to get a deflection. So if we make this pass right here, he's trying to hit it out with his hand. And then, of course, if I pass it back, he's going to recover to that guy. Now the key here when you're in deny, you want to see both. A lot of players is they'll stare right here at the basketball. So Caleb, just stare at me. If this defender's just staring at me, backdoor is going to be wide open. So you've got to get in a position, and Caleb, just show what it's like to see both right here. So Caleb can see both right here. He's looking that way, but he can see his man and he can see me with the basketball at the same time. So you still want to see both, okay? Now we're going to go stunt and recover. Stunt and recover. So this is not fully helping. This is a strategy you use, like Brock, he's a really good shooter, so a lot of defenders would use this on him. Caleb's going to be the defender. I'm going to catch it over there and drive, but instead of Caleb fully helping, he's going to stunt, which just means he jabs at me and then immediately recovers out to his man. So let's give an example of that, of stunt and recover. So I'll catch, I'm going to drive. Yep, you just step at me and then go back out. Good, we'll do one more. I'm going to get a little more space. Yep, exactly. So stunt and recover is used when you're guarding a really good shooter because you don't want to fully commit to that player who's driving because now you're going to leave them wide open. And something else that the stunt will do is if you make that ball handler think you're attacking them, they're going to pick up their dribble, and then when they pick up their dribble, you can recover out. So we've had help position, deny, stunt, recover. Now we're going to talk about defending the post, so we're going to talk about butt to the baseline. So Brock, you can go low wing right there. Caleb, you're still going to be defense. You'll guard the perimeter right here, Caleb, and then you'll go butt to the baseline defending the post. So now the position we're talking about is Caleb is guarding the offensive player on the perimeter. We're going to have a post feed. So as Brock feeds, I'm on offense right here. As Brock feeds me in the post, the perimeter defender is now going to go butt to the baseline. So he's going to open up right there, and now he's basically in help or deny position, but now it's between the block or the post player and the perimeter. So a couple things Caleb can do, the defender can do, is they can kind of, play cat and mouse or fake at the post player. So let's do that, Caleb. I'll catch it down here, and then you'll just kind of fake at me a couple times. So we feed the post. Caleb goes butt to the baseline. Now he's faking at me, trying to confuse the ball handler and trying to make him pick up the basketball. So that's one thing. The second thing is a dig. So Caleb, now I'm going to catch it. I'm going to put it on the floor and turn my head, and then you got to dig and poke the ball out. Okay? So post feed, Caleb goes butt to the baseline. Now as I dribble and look that way, this perimeter defender's looking to go palms up and deflect the basketball right there. Now, one last thing, or two things with butt to the baseline. What you don't want to do, here you go play post offense. So if I'm the perimeter defender and we get a post feed, what we don't want to do is go like butt towards the top of the key. Because now, if I'm at this angle, I can only see the corner of the floor. But if I go butt to the baseline, now I can see the whole floor. So if a screen or backdoor happened, I could be able to communicate that. And then the second thing is, we'll switch again, Caleb. Depends on your, you'll be defense on the perimeter. Depends on your team's defense. But some defenses, what they'll do is they'll go and trap the post. So let's pass and don't trap yet, Caleb. So Caleb's butt to the baseline. But what some defensive teams will do is they'll wait for the post player to dribble. So if he catches it, post player catches it, and they're seeing the floor, and then as soon as they dribble, that's when a lot of defenses will send that perimeter defender to trap, because now if they pick up their dribble, now they can't go anywhere with it. So depends on your defense of when you dig and when you go down to trap, but a good strategy to use is to go trap when they dribble so you can force them to pick it up. So there's two common mistakes defenders make when they're in help position, and there are two types of overhelping. So one is as the pass is made from the top of the key over to the wing, one type of overhelping is when this defender, instead of getting halfway, you normally want to be about halfway, they get like 3/4 of the way. Yeah. So if he's a help defender, he would be overhelping in this position, and he's way too far. Now since he's overhelped, this closeout is a lot farther going into that shooter. So typically, if you have a really good shooter, you don't even want to help 50% of the way there. You might only want to go 1/3 of the way there. And then the other type of help, of overhelping, is, let's say we pass this way, okay? Now let's just imagine that my defender stays on me, they contain the ball, I don't get past them. Like if my defender is on me and I drive it and they're still in front of me and they're defending me and I haven't gotten by them, this guy doesn't need to help. What'll happen a lot of times is defenders will overhelp, like this perimeter offensive player, they'll catch the ball, they'll drive, their defender will still be on them, they didn't get by their defender, and then this defender steps in. Well, now you're kind of trapping and leaving that top player open. So you don't want to overhelp in terms of jumping too far to the ball, and then you also don't want to overhelp if the other defender has contained their offensive player well enough. All right, now two things to think about on backdoor cuts is, one, you typically have help at the rim. So let's say, Caleb, you're going to go into deny position off this pass. So now Caleb's in deny, and usually when you're in deny, you're at a risk of getting backdoored. So let's say an offensive player has the ball on the wing there. Well, usually when you're in deny, you have a weak side defender who is protecting the rim, so that if this top player does backdoor cut and this defender gets burned, hopefully you have help right here in the paint denying that cut right there. And then the second thing is, if you do get backdoored and you have to recover at the last second, let's talk about a bad way to recover and a good way to recover. So Caleb, you can just take like one step towards Brock. So if Caleb does get backdoored, and I'll tell you when to go, Brock. If Caleb does get backdoored, what he doesn't want to do, although this sometimes works, but you usually don't, you don't want to open up this way. You don't want to open up that way. So let's do that, just half speed. So let's say, Brock, you go backdoor. Caleb, you open up and reverse pivot. You typically don't want to open up that way. Instead, what you want to do, and we'll have a drill on this in a little bit, instead, what you want to do is this defender, instead of opening up, they're just going to turn their head that way and then find the basketball. So let's just do that half speed. So you're in deny, go back door, turn your head, find the basketball, yep, and then deflect it right there. So don't open up, just be able to have your head here where you're seeing both and then turn your head that way and find the basketball. Okay, now we're gonna talk about defending cutters. So we're gonna talk about a passing cut, and then we're gonna talk about a flash cut from the opposite side. So the first thing is a face cut. You never want to be face cut, obviously. So if we make this pass right here, the worst thing that could happen is Brock, the offensive player, could just cut right in front of the face of the offensive player and get a layup. So obviously we don't want that to happen. So from Caleb's perspective, from the defensive perspective, after this pass is made, go ahead. If you can just jump to the ball, then you're going to be in position where you're not going to get face cut. But even let's say, Caleb, let's say you just forget to jump to the ball. Or let's say you're guarding, let's say they're an elite scorer and we're not even helping off that score. Well, even if you don't jump to the ball, you can still, if Brock, you try to face cut, you can still just jump in front of them. And usually the technique you want to use is you have your forearm. So you got your forearm right here ready to bump into them. Obviously you're not pushing off because that's a foul, but you're just letting that cutter run into your forearm, and then you have your other hand up in the passing lane. So you're either jumping to the ball to prevent the face cut, or you're just using that forearm to cut them off. Okay, now let's say, Brock, you're on the opposite wing. Caleb, I'm gonna have the ball over here, and you're gonna be in help position. So now we just talked about jumping to the ball and stopping the face cut. Now we're talking about stopping a face cut or a flash cut from the opposite side. So if Caleb's guarding Brock and the ball's over here, what we don't want to happen is no contact at all. So if Brock flashes across, Caleb didn't even touch him, obviously he gets the ball and now he can make a play out of there. That's worst case scenario. Even if they do catch the ball, you still want to hit them. You still want them to have a consequence for going in the paint. So the ideal situation is if Brock goes to cut to the elbow, Caleb's going to step up early. Okay, good. Stop right there. Caleb's going to step up early and have this forearm ready to hit the cutter and the other arm in the passing lane, just like we talked about up there. And we want to hit that cutter early. So as Brock is going across, Caleb hit him late, like at the elbow. So Caleb hasn't made contact with him, and now he hits him at the elbow. Not bad. Better than no contact at all, but not great. So go back. In this situation, Caleb wants to be able to make contact with Brock about at the midline of the court. So Caleb stepping up, boom, makes contact, and now he's denying that pass, and hopefully they can't get the pass off. So the key, whether it's you are denying a face cut from the top of the key or a flash cut, you always want to create contact. You always want to have your other arm up in the passing lane, and then you want to make the pass hard to catch. All right, now we are talking closeouts. I'm not going to go over the technique of closeout. Every team and every coach has a different technique for closeouts, but I am going to talk about knowing your personnel / who you are guarding. So we're going to go over a couple scenarios right here. So Brock's on defense, Caleb's on offense. I'm going to pass it to Caleb, and then Brock's going to approach Caleb and close out towards him. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say Caleb is a really good shooter, which he really is. He is a really, really good shooter. So Brock knows my offensive player is a really good shooter. So first of all, he's going to cheat up probably a little bit, and he's going to close out super, super close to Caleb to take away the shot. So let's just work on that. He's a really good shooter, closing out really close. Here we go. Yep. So as he's closed out, look how close he is to him. His hands straight up, his elbows like right in this guy's face, and he's taking away his shot. So that's against a really good shooter. Now let's say he's a terrible shooter. Terrible shooter, he shoots like 15% or less. Okay, here we go. So now in this closeout, Brock is way shorter, way shorter. He's like even further than an arm's length away because he knows this guy is a terrible shooter, so we almost want that player to shoot. So we're going to close out way short. And some coaches might even have, like, if this is a center and they shoot, like, never make a three, you might even close out all the way back here and just protect the paint. Okay, so that's against a great shooter, a terrible shooter. Now the third player and the last one we'll talk about is a player who is really, really good at driving with either their right hand or their left hand. So Brock, we're going to say Caleb is an elite right-handed driver, so you're going to close out on him and of course funnel him to his left. Okay? All right, so here's the skip pass and the closeout. Yep, good right there. Yep, so Brock did it perfectly. He knows that Caleb is really good driving with his right hand, so that means Caleb's going to try to go this way. Well, what Brock did is he cut that off, he opened his hips and dared that player to drive to their left hand. So all those, great shooter, terrible shooter, elite driver, one way or the other, know who you're guarding, and you want to take away their number one strength on your closeout. All right, now we're going to talk about down screens. So let's say I'm going to be the screener. So we'll just have the ball up top. And we're just talking defensive IQ. So let's say, Caleb, you're going to be in the corner. Brock, you're on defense. Okay, we're imagining there's a passer here at the top of the key. And each time, Caleb, you're going to walk in. Yep, Brock, you're defending Caleb. And each time, I'm going to set a screen about right here, and we're just going to talk through different personnels. So the first one we're talking about, we'll talk a strategy of defending the down screen. So the first strategy we'll talk about is just wedging or kind of blowing up the screen. So this means as I go into this screen, and we got a defender and an offensive player, when we talk about wedging the screen, what Brock is going to do is as the cutter is going into the screen, the defender is really trying to wedge and get right between the screener and the cutter. So y'all can go back. Or just kind of blow it up. So the key here, if you're trying to wedge the screen, is you have to make contact before the offensive player gets to the screen. Because if you don't, like, just trail right here. If Brock trails this offensive player and you can stop right there, or y'all can go back now. But if he trails and creates no contact before the screen, he's not going to be able to blow it up. So if you're trying to wedge the screen, create contact with the cutter right away, and now you're on his inside shoulder trying to split or wedge that screen. All right, good. Next one is just going under the screen. So this is going to be against a bad shooter. So we're imagining Caleb can't shoot. So Brock knows that as the defender. As we go into this down screen, Brock's going to create that contact, but then go under the screen so that he can protect the paint. All right, now let's go over. So now let's say, and this is kind of like wedging the screen, but we can go over the screen. This guy's a really good shooter, so Brock can either trail him or wedge it. Right here, he's trailing him, he's right behind him, he's on his hip, and he's on him right as he goes into the catch. We'll just talk about getting on the cutter's hip. So if Brock is going to trail, so we talked about wedging the screen, which is where you get between the screener and the cutter. Now trailing just means you're directly behind the cutter. So if we go down screen, what we're going to do is, y'all can pause right there. What you're going to do is, Brock's doing it perfect. He's going to have his hand on a hip, hand on the hip of the cutter, and he is going to be directly behind him. Go ahead. As he's coming off that screen, the defender's going to be low, and you really got to have a lot of effort into it. But it goes back to being able to create contact before the screen and then just staying locked on their hip as they go out of the screen. So again, this all goes back to knowing who you're guarding, whether it's a closeout, whether it's you're on the ball, whether you're defending a down screen, whatever it is, know who you're guarding, and you're just trying to take away their strengths and take away what they're good at.